Homeless woman begs Melania Trump for $1. What she does next will warm your heart. Maria shivered as she pulled the worn edges of her coat tighter around herself, the cold morning wind biting against her skin. She had lost track of how long she had been on the streets, weeks, maybe months. The days blurred together in an endless cycle of hunger, exhaustion, and uncertainty. The streets of Washington, D.C. were always bustling, filled with politicians, businessmen, and tourists who rushed past her without a second glance. She had learned not to take it personally. People had their own problems. But today, something felt different. Maria stood outside a high-end cafe, staring at the customers inside, sipping their steaming coffee, their laughter warm and inviting. She hadn't eaten since the day before. The hunger gnawed at her stomach, but it wasn't just food she needed, it was hope. She took a deep breath and mustered the courage to do something she never thought she would. Her eyes landed on a woman walking down the sidewalk. She was stunning, dressed in a pristine cream-colored coat, her hair cascading in soft waves. Melania Trump. Maria's heart pounded. She knew who she was. Everyone did. For a brief moment, doubt crept in. Would she even acknowledge her? Would she just walk past like everyone else? But something inside her pushed forward. She stepped into Melania's path, her voice barely above a whisper. "Excuse me, ma'am, could you spare just $1? Melania stopped. Maria braced herself for rejection. But instead, something unexpected happened. Melania looked her in the eyes. Not past her. Not through her. At her. There was no pity in Melania's gaze, just curiosity. $1? Melania asked gently. Why just one? Maria swallowed hard, suddenly unsure of how to explain. But I just need enough for a cup of coffee. That's all. Melania tilted her head slightly. Do you mind if I ask, what's your name? Maria hesitated. No one had asked her name in a long time. Maria. Melania smiled, offering a warm handshake. Nice to meet you, Maria. Maria's throat tightened. This wasn't how these encounters usually went. Most people either ignored her or tossed a few coins into her cup without even looking at her. But Melania wasn't just giving her money. She was giving her time. And that meant more than $1 ever could. Maria couldn't understand what was happening. She had spent so much time being invisible, ignored, dismissed, treated like a problem rather than a person. But now, standing face to face with Melania Trump, she felt something she hadn't in a long time. Melania's expression remained calm, thoughtful. She wasn't in a rush to leave, wasn't impatiently fishing $1 out of her purse just to be done with the moment. Instead, she studied Maria like she genuinely wanted to understand her. Maria's fingers tightened around the frayed edges of her coat. A part of her wanted to run. This interaction felt too real, too much. She wasn't used to people caring. You only asked for $1, Melania said again, her voice soft yet steady. Why? Maria hesitated, feeling suddenly embarrassed. Most people on the street asked for whatever they could get, $5, $10, even $20 if someone was feeling generous. But Maria had never wanted pity. She swallowed hard, her voice barely above a whisper. But I just wanted a cup of coffee. Melania tilted her head, waiting. Maria's heart pounded as she continued. I used to run a little bakery. I loved making coffee for my customers, the smell of fresh bread in the morning, the way people would smile when they took their first sip. Her voice cracked. But life doesn't always go the way you planned. Melania didn't look away. I lost everything, Maria admitted, her throat tightening. And now, every morning, I stand outside this cafe, smelling the coffee, remembering what it felt like to have a home, a job, a purpose. She let out a shaky breath. I don't need a lot. I just wanted to feel normal for a moment. Just one cup. Silence stretched between them. The street bustled around them, but in this moment, it felt like the world had shrunk down to just the two of them. Then, something happened that Maria never expected. Melania reached into her purse, but not for $1. Instead, she pulled out a crisp, neatly folded $100 bill and placed it in Maria's trembling hands. Maria's eyes widened. I can't take this. Melania smiled warmly. Yes, you can. But Melania gently touched Maria's hand, silencing her protest. Maria, coffee is not what you truly want, is it? Maria's breath hitched. She didn't want a handout. She didn't want to be another forgotten face on the street. She wanted a second chance. Melania took a step closer. Do you trust me? Maria hesitated before nodding, still gripping the bill like it might disappear at any moment. Then come with me, Melania said. Maria froze. Where? To get your coffee, Melania said with a small smile. And maybe something more. Maria followed Melania down the street, her mind racing. This had to be a dream. Any moment now, she'd wake up back on the sidewalk, shivering in the cold. The high-end cafe she had always stared at from the outside loomed ahead. A place where powerful people held meetings over imported espresso, where pastries cost more than she used to make in a day. When they walked in, the entire room fell silent. Heads turned. Eyes widened. Customers and staff stared at Maria, her worn-out coat, her messy hair, her tired eyes. Maria shrank back. She had been here before. Not inside, but always outside. She had seen how the waiters would wave away homeless people, how security would step in before someone like her even made it to the door. She wasn't supposed to be here. Melania noticed her hesitation and gently placed a hand on Maria's back, guiding her forward. She's with me, Melania said simply. A waitress stumbled over herself to grab the best table, fumbling with the menus. Mrs. Trump, it's an honor. Can I get you your usual? Melania shook her head. No, thank you. Maria, what would you like? Maria's throat felt dry. She looked around at the rich leather chairs, the polished marble floors. She didn't belong here. I can't afford anything, Maria whispered. Melania's eyes softened. I didn't ask that. Maria hesitated before finally murmuring, Just a coffee, please. Melania smiled at the waitress. Make that too. They sat across from each other at the table, and for the first time in years, Maria felt like a person again. She didn't feel like a burden, like an invisible shadow on the street. She was simply a woman having coffee with another woman. The first sip was heaven. Warm, rich, familiar. It tasted like hope. For the first few minutes, Maria just sat there, taking it all in. The way people whispered around them. The way the waitstaff stole glances, curious and confused. The way Melania sat across from her, completely at ease, like this was the most normal thing in the world. Finally, Maria placed her cup down, her fingers still wrapped around it like she was afraid to let go. Why are you doing this? She asked softly. Melania studied her for a moment. Then she leaned forward. Because I believe in second chances, she said. And I think you do too. Tears stung Maria's eyes. No one had ever said that to her before. Melania reached into her bag again, this time pulling out a business card. She slid it across the table. My team runs a charity that helps women get back on their feet, she explained. We provide shelter, job training, and resources. If you're ready, I want to help you rebuild. Maria's breath caught in her throat. Real, tangible help. Not just a few dollars to get by for another day. Not just sympathy or kind words that faded as quickly as they came. An actual chance to start over. She gripped the card tightly. But why me? She asked, her voice shaking. Melania smiled, her gaze steady. Because I believe that when someone falls, they don't need judgment. They need a hand to help them back up. A tear slipped down Maria's cheek. For the first time in years, she felt something she thought she had lost forever. Maria sat frozen, her fingers trembling around the business card as if it might vanish if she let go. She had never expected this, not in her wildest dreams. People had given her coins before, maybe a few kind words on a rare day, but never something like this. Never a real opportunity. She swallowed, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know what to say. Melania smiled softly, stirring her coffee. You don't have to say anything right now. Just think about it. Maria's heart pounded. Could she really start over? Could she truly walk away from this life, from the cold nights, the endless hunger, the exhaustion that had settled so deep in her bones she barely remembered what it felt like to not be tired? Doubt crept in. What if she wasn't good enough? What if she failed again? She looked at Melania, studying the woman who had stopped for her when no one else would. Why me? She asked again, her voice raw. Melania took a sip of her coffee before setting the cup down gently. Because I see someone who hasn't given up. Maria let out a shaky laugh. I feel like I have. Melania shook her head. If you had, you wouldn't have asked for just $1. You wouldn't still be here, trying to hold on to the pieces of the life you lost. Maria's eyes burned with unshed tears. No one had ever put it like that before. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The hum of conversations around them faded into the background. Maria stared at the business card again, reading the elegant lettering. Hope Initiative, Women's Rehabilitation and Employment Program. The words felt unreal. I used to run a bakery, she found herself saying, her voice barely above a whisper. It was small, nothing fancy, but it was mine. My husband and I built it together. Then he got sick. The medical bills wiped us out. After he passed, I lost everything. I couldn't keep up with the rent. I tried to fight, but she exhaled shakily. Some fights you just can't win. Melania listened, never interrupting. Maria wiped at her eyes quickly. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Melania reached across the table, placing a warm hand over hers. It's not too late. Maria met her gaze, searching for any trace of pity, but there was none. Just quiet strength. She inhaled deeply, trying to steady herself. What would happen if I called this number? Melania's lips curved into a small smile. We'd start by getting you somewhere safe to stay. Then we'd work with you to get back on your feet. You have skills, Maria. You ran a business. That doesn't just disappear. Maria clenched the card tightly. The fear of failing again clawed at her, but there was something else, too, something she hadn't felt in years. She exhaled shakily. Okay. Melania's smile grew. Okay. That night, Maria lay in a warm bed for the first time in over a year. The shelter Melania had arranged for her was nothing extravagant, but it was safe. She had a pillow, fresh sheets, and a door that locked. For the first few hours, she couldn't sleep. The silence was unfamiliar. No honking cars, no distant sirens, no cold wind slipping through the cracks of a cardboard shelter. Just stillness. She ran her fingers over the business card on the nightstand. Could this really be happening? The next morning, she made the call. Within hours, Maria was sitting in an office with a woman in a navy blue blazer who introduced herself as Christine, the program coordinator. She spoke with kindness but also firmness, like she truly believed Maria could rebuild her life. You're already ahead of the curve, Christine said, flipping through the notes she had taken. You have experience running a business. You understand finances, customer service, operations. These are skills we can work with. Maria swallowed. But I don't have anything left. Christine leaned forward. That's not true. You have you. And that's enough to start. The words hit Maria deep in her chest. For the next few weeks, she worked harder than she ever had. She attended business workshops, met with mentors, even started drafting a business plan for a small cafe. She wanted to quit at times. Some days, the weight of everything she had lost felt unbearable. But every time doubt crept in, she thought of Melania's words. It's not too late. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was building something. 3 months later, Maria stood in front of a small vacant bakery space, her heart pounding. Through the foundation's help, she had secured a microloan to restart her business. The space needed work, but she could already see it. The smell of fresh bread in the air, the laughter of customers, the warmth of a place that felt like home. A hand touched her shoulder. She turned to see Melania standing beside her, smiling. You did this, Melania said softly. Maria shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. You did this. You believed in me when I didn't. Melania's smile deepened. You believed in yourself. I just reminded you. Maria let out a shaky laugh. She looked at the keys in her hand, the ones that unlocked a new future. For the first time in years, she wasn't begging for $1. She was owning a business. And all it took was one person willing to see her. One act of kindness that changed everything. The grand opening of Maria's bakery was a miracle she never thought possible. Just months ago, she had been sleeping on the streets, clinging to the distant memory of the life she had lost. Now, she stood in front of a charming little cafe, the sign above the door freshly painted with her name. Maria's Home Bakery. She ran her fingers over the smooth wooden counter, inhaling the scent of fresh bread and coffee. The air was warm, comforting, just like she always dreamed it would be. But even as she stood there, she felt an overwhelming mix of gratitude and disbelief. She had fought every step of the way to get here, but none of this would have been possible without the woman who had stopped for her that day. The woman who had looked past the ragged coat and the tired eyes and seen something worth saving. And that woman was walking through the front door right now. Melania Trump stepped inside, graceful as ever, dressed in an elegant beige coat. Her eyes swept the room before settling on Maria, and a soft smile curved her lips. "You did it," Melania said simply, her voice filled with warmth. Maria barely held back tears. "I wouldn't be here without you." Melania shook her head. "No, Maria. You fought for this. You never gave up." Maria swallowed the lump in her throat. "I wanted to. So many times. But every time I did, I thought about what you said. That it wasn't too late. That I could still start over." Melania stepped closer, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "And look at you now. A business owner again." Maria let out a soft, disbelieving laugh. "It still doesn't feel real." Melania smiled knowingly. "Then let's make it feel real." She turned toward the crowd outside, waiting for the official opening. The local news was here, along with customers, old friends who had heard Maria's story, and even some of the women from the Hope Initiative program. Maria felt a deep sense of pride. She wasn't just opening a bakery. She was proving that second chances were possible. The grand opening. The ribbon-cutting ceremony was overwhelming. The cameras flashed as Melania handed Maria a large golden pair of scissors. "Would you do the honors?" Melania asked. Maria's hands trembled as she cut the ribbon, officially opening her bakery. The crowd erupted in cheers, and for the first time in so long, Maria felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be. Customers flooded inside, ordering coffee, pastries, fresh bread. Maria moved behind the counter like she had never left, pouring drinks, chatting with guests, smiling more than she had in years. Then, something unexpected happened. A woman stepped forward, her eyes wide, tears brimming in her gaze. Maria turned to greet her, but before she could speak, the woman whispered, "You don't remember me, do you?" Maria blinked. The woman looked familiar, but her mind struggled to place her. Then the woman reached into her purse and pulled out a crumpled bakery receipt. Maria's breath caught in her throat. "You used to own a bakery on Main Street," the woman said, her voice thick with emotion. "Years ago, I came in with my daughter. She was sick, and we had no money. I was going to leave, but you," her voice cracked. "You gave us food. You told me to pay when I could." Maria's heart clenched. Memories flooded back. She remembered now. A young mother, exhausted and desperate, holding the hand of a frail little girl. Maria had never let a hungry child leave empty-handed. Tears streamed down the woman's face. "I never got to pay you back." She reached into her pocket, pulling out a $100 bill. "I've been waiting for years to find you again." Maria's hands shook as she took the bill, staring at the woman in shock. "I don't understand," Maria whispered. The woman smiled through her tears. "You helped me when I had nothing. And now, someone helped you. The world is kinder than we think, Maria." Maria's chest felt too full. She looked at Melania, who simply nodded knowingly. What goes around comes around. The full circle moment. That night, after the bakery had closed and the last guest had gone home, Maria sat by the window, looking out at the street she had once slept on. It was surreal. Months ago, she had stood in this exact spot, invisible to the world. Now, she was sitting inside her own business, sipping warm tea, reflecting on the incredible journey that had led her here. Melania sat across from her, watching her quietly. "What are you thinking about?" Melania asked gently. Maria exhaled. "How strange life is. How one moment can change everything." Melania nodded. "All it takes is someone willing to see beyond what's on the surface." Maria smiled softly. "I want to do the same for others. I don't want this bakery to just be a business. I want it to be a place where people can find hope, where no one is turned away because they don't have enough. Melania's eyes glowed with pride. Then I'd say you've already won. Maria wiped at her eyes, laughing softly. I never thought I'd say this, but I'm happy. And for the first time in a long, long time, she truly was. Blog, 1 year later. 1 year later, Maria's home bakery had become a thriving business. Her story had spread across the country, inspiring others. She had hired women from the Hope Initiative program, helping those who had walked the same path she had. And outside the bakery, a small bronze plaque hung on the wall, with an inscription that read, "No act of kindness is ever wasted. $1 can change a life." Maria touched the plaque every morning before opening the doors, a quiet reminder of where she had been and how far she had come. She had asked for $1, and instead she had been given a new life. And now, she was determined to pass it on. The sun had long set over the city, casting a warm golden glow on the quiet streets as Maria locked up her bakery for the night. The sign above the door, Maria's Home Bakery, gleamed softly under the streetlights, a symbol of everything she had fought for. As she turned to leave, she paused, running her fingers over the small bronze plaque beside the entrance. No act of kindness is ever wasted. $1 can change a life. A wave of emotions surged through her. Just months ago, she had stood in this very spot, invisible, overlooked, forgotten. But today, she was somebody again. The bell above the door jingled as she stepped back inside, drawn by the comforting scent of freshly baked bread and warm cinnamon. The bakery had become more than just a place of business. It was a haven, a second chance, not just for her, but for so many others. She heard the soft clatter of dishes from the kitchen, followed by the sound of gentle laughter. "Maria, we're almost done cleaning up," called out Sophia, a young woman who had once been in the same position Maria had found herself in. Sophia had been one of the first hires Maria had made, a woman with a past filled with hardships, but a heart full of determination. The bakery had given her a fresh start, just as Melania had given Maria one. Maria walked toward the back, watching as her small team of employees, all women who had once struggled, who had once been at rock bottom, moved gracefully through the kitchen, wiping down counters, packaging up the last of the pastries for tomorrow. She felt a deep sense of pride. This bakery wasn't just a business. It was a beacon of hope. A knock at the door startled her. She glanced at the clock. It was late. Too late for customers. Curious, she walked over, unlocking the door cautiously. Her breath caught in her throat when she saw Melania Trump standing there, holding a single white envelope. Maria immediately smiled, stepping aside. "Please come in." Melania stepped inside, removing her cream-colored gloves. "I was in the area and wanted to stop by. I heard business is going well." Maria nodded, her heart full. "Better than I ever imagined." Melania looked around, taking in the cozy interior, the small wooden tables, the glass display cases filled with delicate pastries, croissants, and warm loaves of bread. The walls were adorned with photos, pictures of Maria's past bakery, snapshots of smiling customers, and even a framed picture of the day the bakery had opened, with Melania standing beside her. "This place has a soul," Melania said, her voice filled with admiration. "I knew you could do it." Maria swallowed the lump in her throat. "I still can't believe it sometimes." Melania smiled knowingly. "That's because you're still looking at it as a dream. But Maria, this is real. You made it real." Maria wiped her hands on her apron, trying to hold back her emotions. "I'm just grateful. You didn't have to stop that day. You didn't have to help me." Melania's gaze softened. "You were meant to be found, Maria." She placed the white envelope on the counter and slid it toward her. Maria frowned, her hands hesitant. "What is this?" Melania gestured for her to open it. With careful fingers, Maria tore open the envelope, pulling out a neatly folded document. Her breath caught. It was a donation. A large one. Her hands trembled as she read the amount, her mind struggling to grasp it. It was more money than she had ever seen in her life. "Melania, I can't accept this," she whispered. "This is too much." Melania shook her head. "No, Maria. This is exactly what you deserve." Maria looked up, tears brimming in her eyes. "But why? Melania reached out, taking Maria's hands in hers. Because I believe in what you're doing. You didn't just rebuild your life. You're changing other people's lives too. You took what I gave you and turned it into something much bigger. This isn't just a bakery, it's a place where people find second chances, where people find hope. And I want to make sure it stays that way. Maria's vision blurred with tears. She had spent so many nights wondering if she would ever matter again. And now, standing here, she realized she did. She mattered. Her bakery mattered. Her story mattered. Thank you, she whispered, her voice breaking. For everything. Melania squeezed her hands gently. You don't have to thank me, Maria. Just keep going. Keep helping others the way you were helped. Maria let out a small, teary laugh. I promise. Melania smiled. Then that's all I need to hear. 1 year later, the bakery had become more than just a business. It was a community. A place where people came not only for food, but for warmth, for kindness, for a reminder that even in the darkest times, there was still good in the world. Maria had expanded. A second location had just opened in a neighboring town. She had trained and mentored dozens of women, all of whom had come from broken places, just like she once had. And every morning, as she unlocked the doors, she ran her fingers over the small bronze plaque by the entrance. No act of kindness is ever wasted. $1 can change a life. Because it had. $1 had led to a conversation. A conversation had led to hope. Hope had led to action. And now, Maria was living proof that one moment of kindness could rewrite an entire future. As she stood behind the counter, watching customers line up with smiles on their faces, she whispered a silent thank you to Melania, to the people who had believed in her, and to the small voice inside herself that had never truly given up. And with that, she tied her apron, poured herself a fresh cup of coffee, and got to work. Because this was only the beginning.